The following podcast is a production of University Counseling Services through California State University, Northridge. CSUN Rempel is a doctoral psychology intern for the institution's APA-accredited internship in health services psychology. Every Gamer Has a Voice is a podcast hosted by a mental health professional that's designed to create discussions about discrimination in gaming experienced by those belonging to underrepresented identities. Through sharing personal experiences as well as disseminating research, this podcast is aimed to shine a light on this type of discrimination while also helping gamers and minority groups feel validated and educated on how they can protect their mental health. So hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of Every Gamer Has a Voice. Today I am joined with Ian Zepeda, also known as Neotainment, and he is the current president of CSUN Esports. He's a fourth-year computer engineering major, and some of his favorite competitive games are Overwatch, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon Champions. Ian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Yes. So I know you and I have gotten to know each other through my training here at CSUN. With any outreach or consultation I've done with esports. And I know I just really sense your passion with the esports club. And I just wanted to ask you, how would you describe the overall culture of CSUN Esports?
Well, our number one priority is most certainly the members. We have a philosophy, but we try to push on to every single one of our members, whether you're competitive or casual, and that you yourself come first, right? We of course want everyone to be as involved as possible when it comes to coming to events or being a high level competitive player and putting time into scrims. But something we need from everyone is that we need you to be academically responsible. We need you to make sure that you yourself are taken care of. And that if you have any family outside of the school that is part of your responsibilities, or you just need to be within that circle for more periods of time than some adults do, then yeah, you have to be just there in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to relay is that we want you to be present in your own life. You yourself are your own responsibility. This is a club in a sense. So all sort of participation is voluntary. If you put in more time than most people, that's perfectly fine. But we really enjoy having people from different skill levels and backgrounds and gaming preferences. But the underlying message there is that you need to be taking care of yourself. Your own responsibility. Make sure you're taken care of before you start putting in so much time into sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like it can be helpful of just acknowledging that there's so many things and responsibilities that students have. A lot of times for the first time, this might be the first time that they're off on their own in their adult lives. And so it's kind of encouraging, while as fun as gaming is, it's also important to take care of yourself in other areas of life too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a really helpful and supportive goal to have. And I know that you mentioned ideally it being a space for people of all skill levels and all backgrounds. I know I've shared with you part of the focus of this podcast and really the main lens is exploring things like discrimination in gaming, especially when it comes to underrepresented gamers, which could be female identified gamers, queer identified gamers of different religions or citizenship, ethnicity, just to name a few. And I just want to know, in your words, what do you think makes a gaming space feel welcoming for diverse students?
Well, it definitely starts with respect. Uh, I feel that people should be really comfortable participating without being worried about being judged for their identity or, like you mentioned, skill level, like if you're in a medal rank or if you're in masters, stuff like that, or your background. We like to set clear expectations for our behavior, which would like include, I would say, encouraging like positive interactions with everyone and making sure new members are like acknowledged and included into trying to like create a more welcoming environment. What I mean by that is we like to, and in past presentations and past events, is that we kind of put out like, hey, this isn't meant to be a casual space. We don't enjoy necessarily having political opinions or people being judged for, let's say, their identity, whether it be if they're in a certain community, like the LGBTQ community, or if they're just not as good at the game as you are. That's something we that's a message we like to put out there. Not, we don't like to. It's something we put in our presentation just to make sure, like, hey, everyone would get this kind of point.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like there's a time and space for certain conversations, but you want your club to be really about playing video games and finding the joy in that and the teamwork in that without anything that could be like inflammatory or things along that line.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. And I know that maybe I think you might have even touched on this next question with including values in presentations. And I still want to ask, maybe there's something else you'd like to add or maybe not, but if there's any intentional steps that CSUN Esports has taken to build a more inclusive environment.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is something I've intentionally done. It will sound terrible at first, but I intentionally have done this. When I first like came in as like the vice president or like the I actually started as risk manager. I first started looking for people who fit into those communities, like let's say the LGBTQ, or if you're neurodivergent. Because one thing I wanted in leadership roles was people of those communities or of those kinds of capabilities. Because I feel like representation is super, super important when you're trying to just bring in foot traffic to your to your club. Uh, in the past, I think for one of our managers for a team, uh, it came down to the decision of two really good people who perfectly met in the role, but they couldn't compromise on being co-managers for some on like unknown reason. I won't dive into it. I picked the individual that I felt would be the most representative of different communities on campus over the person that I felt met with like met with a lot of different communities on campus compared to the rest of the club. I know that
Hmm.
doesn't sound like very good, but I felt that was the best choice that I could make purely because I wanted like that individual to receive an opportunity over. So I
Hmm.
feel like that sounds like a terrible response to that question. Let me know if that's bad.
No, I don't think that sounds terrible at all. It sounds like you had two people that like skill level were very comparable, and you found that choosing one would be more helpful in terms of like inclusivity. And I think that is like a lot of DEI projects, which have a lot of merit and a lot of research to back it up. And then, sadly, not everyone agrees with that now. But I think what you're saying sounds like it's fitting within DEI initiatives and things like that. Even if it is not necessarily a formal thing, I think your decision kind of matches with that. So it doesn't sound bad at all. In fact,
I
it sounds
appreciate
like
it.
it sounds like that would be a really I agree with you of seeing people might be more likely to join a club if they see someone like themselves in it.
That was my main goal with that. Thank you.
I think that's a really powerful goal to have. And not to kind of jump around the questions a bit, but it that leads into this topic of allyship and not only allyship as a leader in your position, but also just allyship of being a fellow gamer. And what I can tell you is in the psychological research, what we find is that allyship really plays a irreplaceable role in social change, meaning that part of advocating for minority groups is to actually have the majority groups um, back them up in cases and in certain instances. And so I just wanted to hear from you. What do you think effective allyship looks like in gaming or esports settings? Is it something like speaking up? I know for me, I utilize that report button on Overwatch many a times as a way to hopefully be an ally and just showing words do have
going,
consequences.
s-
But
going straight for emergency child abuse
yeah,
response.
yeah, the emergency, yeah, yeah. For listeners who are unaware of what that means, like
That's the
Overwatch,
method, right?
yeah, yeah, Overwatch has like you can report for a bunch of different things, but then there's like a certain report button that carries a lot of heavy weight that's like used for emergencies. And so some people will use that one because I guess it could make the
More likely for some action to be
yeah,
taken.
more likely for action. Thank you for for filling in my sentence. Yeah. Yeah, so in your words, what do you think allyship looks like?
I definitely think, like, in terms of effective allyship, I think it means supporting others, regardless of like who they are, rather than remaining silent when problems like happen. So I would say this would include like speaking up when inappropriate behavior can happens, checking in on those who have been effective. And I think the biggest one is making sure that you're helping to create an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of any like community or position. I think good allies use their standing to promote inclusion and to encourage positive community standards. That sounds right. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that too. And just knowing that everyone is a combination of so many different identities, a lot of times what happens is people might be minority groups in one aspect, but then part of the majority group in another aspect. And I think part of that is right, just kind of looking inward, finding out what majority groups you may or may not be a part of, and then um, trying your best to be an ally in that sense too. Like building up other people and kind of like what you said, if you see something, say something.
Right.
Mm. Um, on that topic of seeing something or like witnessing examples of mistreatment or discrimination, what kind of dynamics have you noticed in how minority gamers are treated within gaming spaces, either at CSUN or more broadly?
I think definitely minority gamers. I'll say like one specific like subsection, but this isn't like umbrella over everyone. I definitely think the LGBT community is being a lot more embraced, especially in online spaces.
Hmm.
Uh, while gaming has become like super diverse over the years, especially with like the inclusion of more representation for different communities in video games, like let's say Clove or Venture, well, Clove from Valorant, Venture in Overwatch. There's definitely like a lot of challenges. I can definitely attribute to that. I know in online spaces they're gonna feel or like face a lot of stereotypes, inclusion, like exclusion, and then like definitely insensitive comments. And I think the people here at CSUN are they're pretty respectful. A lot of the rosters and a lot of teams that are casual and competitive are just a giant melting pot or salad of people from all sorts of different races and genders and identities. And it's awesome. I couldn't be happier with that kind of outcome because I feel that just means that my position as well, formerly vice president, risk manager, and president, is that my goal of having everyone enjoy esports is actually being reached. So I still think it's very important to be aware of certain issues like this, like stereotypes, exclusion. But creating awareness and trying to encourage like respectful interactions between everyone, regardless of who you are, definitely helps in those kinds of dynamics.
Yeah, that's very well said. And also, I like what you're pointing out of course, part of the main goal of this podcast is to discuss like current examples of discrimination. But it's also really useful to look and just see how far we have come with progress. I know, like you mentioned, Venture being added to Overwatch, Venture being the first non-binary character who uses they, them pronouns. Overwatch also has several queer characters. Now, during the month of June, certain maps have updated to have Pride. Um, like pride decorations within the maps. Like I think Midtown, New Queen Street has those.
Midtown, yeah.
Yeah.
The painted crosswalks.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
flags on the buildings and the yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, that it's really important. And what I don't play Valorant. Is Clove also a non-binary character?
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
They came out definitely a few years ago. Yeah, there was a lot of interesting conversation around that, so that's why I kind of like brought them up as well as Venture because they both those characters are non-binary. It's just in Valorant, it's a little bit more of a I would say a little bit more of a toxic community from my observations because
Hmm.
you just have two kind of spectrums. You have people who lean a little bit more right, people who lean a little bit more left, all in one game, and it's different.
Hmm. My understanding of Overwatch is, of course, my personal experience too, is that because of just the wide range of characters you can play, it really attracts such a diverse crowd, which I think is a
Yeah.
strength. Like you can be a champion player on Mercy and like never shoot an enemy, and or you could be a champion player on Ash and be super sweaty and like click so many heads. And like both of those are very
Yeah.
valid ways to play the game. Whereas I think with a lot of other games, I think Valorant included, it is very much like point and
Tactile shooter.
yeah, tactile
Yeah.
shooter where the crowd just might be a bit different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely, especially what like from like whatever titles you were previously drawn from. So a lot of people that played Valorant came from CS2. A lot of them came from Overwatch. I think we can both agree that CS2 has a significantly bigger toxicity problem, but to be fair, that's the culture that's established there.
Right. Yeah. That's a good indicator too, is where the gamers coming from. Or like
Right.
which games are they coming from? What are those known for? Um, so to continue with this discussion, I just want to hear from you of what do you think has been effective or not effective when it comes to maintaining a respectful environment for all gamers?
Definitely for me is just consistently enforcing our expectations. So we try to keep our standards clear so everyone knows like what kind of behaviors like expect acceptable. I think what's less effective is assuming problems will resolve themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh so previously I used to be like my first year on eBoard for CSUN Esports, I was the risk manager. So my job was setting these kinds of expectations and like enforcing them.
On the topic of discriminatory language or controversial language, things like that, there's a paper that me and a podcast guest discussed a few weeks ago, and
Oh.
a lot of it interviewed gamers and esports athletes. That's what the paper did, and a lot of them gave the feedback that they did not like the research because what they said was discriminatory language doesn't matter because at the end of the day it's just banter. And not everyone said this, but quite a high percentage of them said this. And I think that is kind of a dangerous thing to to a dangerous belief to hold because it can excuse a lot of bad and harmful behavior and chalk it up to just banter. So I'm curious from you, Ian, when do you think something might cross the line from being competitive banter into something like harmful?
I think definitely. Well, my definition of competitive banter is that it's generally focused on the gameplay and it's understood by everyone who's involved or whoever's in the conversation that it's harmless competition. I think it crosses the line when you start targeting like someone's identity or being hostile towards them, like in terms of causing the environment to take a whole left turn. Or if someone's expressing like discomfort and you're continuing on with that kind of banter. Definitely intent matters. Uh, and so impact does too. So I do have a pretty decent example for this. Again, during my time as risk manager, I handled a lot of different cases. A player had entered a Twitter argument with a couple coaches from the East Coast, and during this argument, well, it was banner. Like, it was more so like, oh, our team smokes yours. You guys are like low tier teams, whatever. Right? It was
Mhm.
competitive banner in terms of like, okay, you guys are poking fun at one another that you guys would be really like you would who would win over the other because of X and Y reasons. It went sideways when the player had told the coach who has been coaching for at least 10 years that, hey, you have a possible brain injury. I won't say specifically what, but he insinuated the coach had a brain injury, like, hey, something's up with you, yada, yada. That was crossing the line because not only your intent sure is like, oh, just to be bantering with one another, but the impact shows that you're unprofessional, that this kind of injury is just something you scoff to the side. And it looks bad on us because that player had CSUN all over their bio.
Mhm.
So we did have to step in and just kind of like, hey, this is unacceptable. This was kind of like a difficult case in terms of like setting a suspension or like something like that. We ended up coming up with a solution with the manager that he would kind of like undergo some sort of course. It was online. It was like a free YouTube course on not effective communication, but banner, like the differences between banner and just outright disrespecting and being and having harmful language towards somebody.
Well, that's really cool that there was a video for that explaining it because right, I think I really like what you're saying about the difference between intention and impact. And a lot of times the people who say very harmful things may not have that as their goal. But there just might be a real maybe lack of like the understanding of how certain words might land or be interpreted. And I think really it shows that like socializing and social skills are skills that we can always continue to build, like even through adulthood. But it sounds like what you're saying, Ian, is like the moment that the banter starts to target the person behind the screen and parts of their identity or maybe their um, like ability or disability, then that's like crossing the line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that's a pretty clear guideline to abide by as well. Um, so, Ian, I think that you have such a I'm sure you have many more stories that you could share too. And I really appreciate what you've shared. I know that you've had quite a few positions in CSUN Esports, and that in this leadership, you really prioritize the students feeling like they belong. You prioritize them having fun, having a good time, but also competing as athletes and inspiring that growth. And I am really excited to hear that you are the president now. I know that you'll do a lot of great things for the club. And to close us out, as a way to close this episode, I Just want to touch base and ask, based on everything that we talked about today, is there anything else from your own experience, whether it's direct or observed, that you feel would be important to share?
I definitely think that at the end of the day, for us as an esports club, I mentioned before that participation is voluntary. But as much as I would love for that, wait, where am I going with this? This doesn't sound right. I apologize.
No, all
I'm like,
good.
I'm like, I'm like hanging. I'm like, where am I going with this? I'm not because I read through the questions and I was just like, okay, I can do this on the fly. I've been
Yeah.
doing every on the fly. This is the one question I think would be difficult to answer because I'm trying to draw from all sorts of like from all the different positions that I held on the club. One thing that
Hmm.
I think I've learned definitely that I can say from my experience is that the culture here in our club is shaped by our everyday interactions. So one very specific example is that I'm very good friends. I've made very good friends with the people on the Overwatch team that we're just friends in a sense. Beyond games, beyond video games, beyond what happens on Discord or on our servers, we're friends at the end of the day, and that's a lifelong like friendship that I couldn't have made had I not like consistently spoken with like members on a day-to-day basis, especially with the shared interest of being Overwatch.
Hmm.
I think that my experience that I've had making these kinds of friends should be available to everybody. And one of my biggest personal goals that I don't put onto any presentation or slide is that I hope everyone who joins this club, whether you're casual, competitive, meets a community of like-minded people who share the same general interests as you. So whether it be Pokemon, whether it be Apex Legends, whether it be some uh, some random thing that came up one day, which was uh rhythm and dance games like DDR, a whole community sprouted up for that. And it made me so happy to like find like people that are genuinely like enjoying themselves over just video games in a sense. Video games for me have always like been that kind of connection and talking piece, especially during COVID with
Hmm.
trying to like make friends and being like alone for your first time like digitally with no sort of like outside connection. Video games definitely help me in that kind of sense, and it makes me so happy that people are making those kinds of connections within the club for all sorts of topics. I think that's important to share because I want that to be something that every single club, every single esports club around the nation to enjoy. And that's a personal joy of mine that I I cannot treasure enough.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a real aspect of like community building, and a lot of times almost seems to be discredited by like majority of society. But really, just gaming and the electronic nature of it adds so much connection and so much possibility for that. And I know that you're doing such a great job on campus and really serving CSUN students. And if any CSUN students or prospective students are listening to this, Ian, where can they go? What can they look up to find out more about esports at CSUN?
So definitely, I think the best way to get to us is to go to our Instagram for CSUN Esports and join our Discord server. We have a channel dedicated for questions. So if you have any sort of questions like regarding the future of like maybe tryouts for a team you really want to try out for, like let's say League of Legends, Valorant, Rocket League, any of those titles, definitely ask questions about those. We have staff that watch that channel periodically, and they can like definitely get directly to the and point you in the right direction in terms of getting in contact with maybe one of the managers or one of the different communities. Let's say, like for example, the dance and rhythm game community that we have. I think that's the best way to get information regarding CSUN Esports. In the future, our website will be updated with all the proper contact information. So let's say you're not a student, but instead you're just parent or a company that's interested in what we have to offer, the proper connections will be made on that website. It should be the CSUN athletic department connections page, so like the sports club page where it contains like rugby, yeah, women's rugby, table tennis, ping pong, archery, other sports like that. There's gonna be all sorts of information. So whether or not you're a parent, a student, or a company that's interested in what CSUN has to offer, I think those are the two best ways to get into contact with someone from our club.
Perfect. And I will include links to those in the description of this as well. Ian, thank you again so much for taking the time to meet today and be a guest on my podcast. And I just also want to say it's been such a pleasure to work with you this past academic year too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been such an honor to not only be on this podcast, but to work with you for the past academic year. I think we've accomplished a lot and we hit a lot of our goals throughout the different collaborations we had, especially with past presentations and at past workshops. I think this kind of connection, I hope at least, will be a very, very long one, especially when I graduate and I give the presidency to someone else.
Yes, absolutely. I think it will definitely be a long one. And right, we hit those goals and I'm sure we will hit many more in the future. But in conclusion, thank you again, Ian, and um I just appreciate everything that you've done at CSUN for the esports department and the students.